"A tea the family will reading," my sister said. Seal GET, nothing. Dad hated her. My uncle laughed. Even her kid knows she's worthless. People nodded as the lawyer opened the document. Then my 10-year-old son stood up and said, "Oh, forgot the video he recorded." The lawyer hit play, and the room feels silent. They didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak. "She will get nothing. Dad hated her." That's what my sister Karen said the moment I stepped into the room. No greeting. No eye contact. Just that sharp cutting sentence, loud enough for everyone to hear, like she wanted it to echo. I felt the words land in my chest like a punch. My grip on my son Eli's hand tightened. His small fingers curled back around mine, warm and trembling. I forced a smile down at him, thin and shaky, but he knew. He always knew. I hadn't even taken a seat yet, but the message was clear. I wasn't welcome. I wasn't family. I was just a loose end they were here to snip clean. Karen sat at the head of the table, perfectly poised in a gray pantsuit, her dark hair scraped into that tight bun she always wore when she wanted to feel superior. Her lipstick was sharp red. Classic Karen. War paint for a battle I didn't know I'd walked into. Then came the voice I dreaded even more. My Uncle Rick, Dad's older brother, let out a dry laugh. He leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, that smug smirk of his spreading like oil across his face. "Even her kid knows she's worthless," Rick muttered, nodding toward Eli like he wasn't even human. Eli lowered his eyes to the floor. My heart cracked a little deeper. Around the room, a few heads nodded. My cousins, old neighbors, family, friends I hadn't seen in years. People who'd long since picked sides, and I wasn't on theirs. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. The air was stale with the smell of dust, leather chairs, and whatever overly sweet perfume Karen had bathed in. I could feel my pulse in my ears, loud, hot, humiliating. I led Eli to the farthest chair at the end of the long mahogany table, away from the pack. The chair creaked when I sat. Eli climbed up beside me, his legs swinging above the floor, his hands folded in his lap like he was trying to disappear. Karen turned her head slowly toward me, and when our eyes met she smiled. But there was no warmth in it, just pity soaked in poison. "You know this is pointless, right?" my sister Karen said. Voice smooth and cold. "Dad rewrote the will, cut you out completely, said you were dead to him." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My tongue sat heavy in my mouth, useless. I just nodded slightly, like I understood. But inside, why did I even come? I thought maybe there'd be something, a note, a line, a sign he remembered me, something to make it all make sense. Instead, I was back in the one place I promised myself I'd never return to, surrounded by people who made it clear they had already buried me long before they buried him. And just as I was about to stand, to leave before they started carving up the estate like vultures, the door creaked open. Mr. Connors, my father's lawyer, entered the room, clutching a thick folder beneath his arm. He looked exactly the same, neatly pressed, tired eyes, and a face that gave nothing away. The room fell silent. Everyone sat up a little straighter. This was it. I braced myself for humiliation. I came expecting nothing, and I'd leave with exactly that, or so I thought. Because what no one in that room knew, not Karen, not Rick, not even me, was that my son Eli had brought something with him. And with one sentence, he would unravel everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video he recorded." It had been 8 years since I stepped foot in a room like this with my family. 8 years since I packed up a life they said I didn't deserve. Took Eli, just 2 at the time, and left without looking back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because every conversation with my father, Charles, ended in silence or shouting. Because every family gathering felt like walking barefoot across glass, while smiling for the camera. But now, I was back in a room that still smelled like cigar smoke and old anger. The irony? I didn't even know I was invited to the will reading. The envelope showed up 3 days after the funeral. No note, just the date, time, and address in Connor's formal script. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to send it to Karen, or maybe it was just a cruel final joke. But Eli wanted to go. He looked at me with those wide, soft eyes, his voice quiet but certain. "We should go, Mom," he said. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." I don't know how a 10-year-old can carry that kind of wisdom, but he does. Sometimes I think he sees the world in ways most adults never learn to, so we came. I wore the plain black dress I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral, and he wore a little button-up that he picked himself. I braided his hair that morning with trembling hands, and he told me I looked beautiful. He didn't know I had barely slept, that I was terrified to face the people who'd treated me like a ghost for nearly a decade. I knew what they thought of me. Karen. The perfect daughter. She stayed. She helped. She took care of Dad. She made sure everyone saw her doing it too. She told the story so many times, it became gospel. Julia abandoned the family. Julia couldn't handle real life. Julia ran away. They never asked why I left. They didn't know or didn't care. The dad stopped speaking to me after I refused to stay in a marriage that was tearing me apart. That when I showed up on his porch with Eli in a suitcase, he shut the door without saying a word. That the one person who was supposed to protect me from the world had become another wall I had to break through. Uncle Rick didn't help. He was Dad's echo, always repeating the same bitter phrases. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Karen, she soaked it all up and turned it into a script she could weaponize. So I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Eli and me. We didn't have much, but we had peace and love and laughter. Still, part of me held on to the smallest, most fragile hope that maybe, in the end, Dad had seen something, regretted something, left something behind. Maybe that's why I opened the envelope, why I showed up. But now, sitting in that room surrounded by hard eyes and smug smiles, I felt foolish for hoping. Eli hadn't said a word since we sat down. He sat straight, hands in his lap, eyes scanning the room like he was studying each face. His calm unnerved me a little, like he was waiting for something. And then Mr. Connors cleared his throat and opened the folder. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, just get through this. Don't let them see you break. But Eli? He was sitting on something bigger than grief. And before this was over, he'd prove he was the only one in the room truly listening to my father. Mr. Connors cleared his throat again, the way lawyers do when they want the room's attention without actually asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the folder, and began reading the will like it was just another Tuesday. I barely heard the first few lines, generic legal stuff, estate definitions, executor declarations. My mind was spinning, not with what he was saying, but with what I knew was coming. He wouldn't say my name. I was sure of it. Still, every time he paused to turn a page, I held my breath, like maybe, just maybe, the next words would be different. Maybe he'd surprise me. But no. It was all the usual suspects. To my daughter, Karen, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face didn't move, but I could feel her satisfaction like perfume wafting across the table. She glanced sideways at her husband, Neil, who gave her a smug little nod, like they were already planning renovations. To my brother Rick, the lake property, and all remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back further in his chair, arms folded, chin high like a king, surveying his newly acquired kingdom. I watched him slide the cigar back between his teeth and bite down gently, like he'd already won something. To Paul, my nephew, the vintage car collection. Paul? The cousin who once locked me out of my own room at age 9 just to watch me cry? That Paul? I bit the inside of my cheek to keep my face from cracking. I could feel the tears gathering behind my eyes, hot and sharp, but I didn't let them fall. Still no mention of me, not even a footnote. Then came the line I'd been dreading. And as previously declared, my daughter, Julia, will not receive a portion of this estate. There it was. Simple. Final. Like a closing door. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Eli's fingers slipped into mine under the table. I hadn't even realized my hands were clenched in my lap. His touch brought me back, anchored me before I drifted too far. I could feel my heartbeat behind my eyes. My skin burned. And then came the whispers, low but intentional. Karen let out the softest scoff. Told you, she muttered to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head like it was all so predictable. Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father, he said louder than he needed to. The others, the cousins, the so-called family friends, didn't say much, but their silence was just as loud. I stared down at the wood grain on the table. The lines twisted and spiraled, almost hypnotic. It was easier to look at that than their faces. I could hear my own voice inside my head, flat and hollow. Why did I come? Why did I think he'd remember me? But then, Eli moved. He let go of my hand and sat up straighter. I felt the shift before I saw it. His voice cut through the tension like a tiny blade, soft but unshakable. "You forgot the video he recorded." The room froze. Karen blinked. Rick turned. Mr. Connors paused, pen still hovering over the page. I turned to Eli, confusion flooding my brain. "What video?" I asked, barely above a whisper, but Eli wasn't looking at me. He was looking straight ahead, steady, certain. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small white envelope, slightly crumpled but sealed tight. My name was on the front, but underneath it was Dad's handwriting. "For the lawyer, only if it gets ugly." I didn't understand it yet, but Eli did. And suddenly, for the first time all day, I felt the balance in the room shift. I stared at the envelope in my son Eli's hands like it was radioactive. He held it so calmly, like it wasn't the most dangerous object in the room, but my eyes were locked on the handwriting across the front, sharp, all caps, unmistakable. My father's, "For the lawyer, only if it gets ugly." Well, it had gotten ugly. I could barely find my voice. "Eli, where did you get that?" He looked up at me, his expression soft but steady. "Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe." My heart stuttered. He gave it to you?" He nodded. "The day we visited him. Just me and him." "You were at work." I blinked hard, trying to pull memory into focus. I remembered that day. Eli had asked if he could go with my neighbor to drop off something at Dad's. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they even spoke. Now Mr. Connors reached across the table. "May I?" he asked gently, and Eli handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Karen was squinting like she couldn't make sense of it. Rick shifted in his seat, no longer slouched. For once, nobody had anything to say. The envelope made a quiet tearing sound as Connors opened it. Inside was a USB drive, small, black, ordinary. But my pulse kicked like it was a grenade. Connors furrowed his brow and pulled a note from the envelope too, another page in my father's handwriting. His eyes scanned it, and for the first time since he walked into the room, his composure cracked, just slightly, but I saw it. He didn't speak right away. He just nodded slowly, like something unspoken had been confirmed. "Everyone," Connors said, his voice quieter now. "There is a video message from Charles Thomas, recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if this situation became contentious." His eyes flicked to Karen, then Rick. They both shifted in their chairs. Karen scoffed. "This is ridiculous." He didn't say anything about a video. Uncle Rick leaned forward, voice harder now. "We don't know what's even on that thing. Could be fake." Connors raised a hand. "It's time-stamped, authenticated. I recognize the handwriting and signature, and per his instructions, I'm legally bound to play it." He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop sitting on the desk beside him. The screen flickered to life, the logo dissolving into a black frame with a single word, "Play." The air in the room changed. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I gripped the arms of my chair like they might keep me from floating off into some other world. My breathing was shallow, shaky. Why would Dad leave a video? Why to Eli? What could he possibly want to say now after everything? Eli didn't look nervous. He just sat still, eyes on the screen like he already knew what was coming. Karen looked pale now. Her lips were pressed into a tight line. Rick had stopped chewing his cigar. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But mostly, I wanted to know. Connors hit the spacebar. The screen went black for half a second, then flickered. And suddenly, there he was, my father, older, thinner, sitting at his desk, wearing that navy sweater I bought him for his last birthday, the one I didn't know he'd ever worn. His hands were folded. His expression, not cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera, and then he started to speak. I didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up, not when I saw his face, not when I heard the first two words leave his mouth. "Hi, Julia." He looked older than I remembered. His skin had thinned. His once proud posture had softened. But it was still my father, Charles Thomas, sitting at that worn oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when we were kids. Only this time, his expression wasn't stern or distant. It was human. "If you're watching this," he continued, "I'm gone. And I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers twitching slightly. A small nervous habit I had too. "I didn't expect peace between you and the family. I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you." He looked down, swallowed, and I was wrong. My breath caught in my throat. My nails dug into the armrest of my chair. Eli glanced up at me, but I couldn't look away. I believed what Karen told me. I believed Rick. I believed that you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen to you, not once. You tried, and I shut the door in your face, on you and Eli. I heard Karen shift in her chair, sharp and uncomfortable. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Dad's voice cracked, just barely. "I thought being strong meant being proud, that if you walked away, it was betrayal. But strength is showing up. It's protecting your child, and you did that. You did what I couldn't." His eyes glistened. My own vision blurred. I met Eli one day when he stopped by. Just the two of us. That kid, he didn't say much. But when I asked him about you, he just said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." My hand flew to my mouth. "I lost you, Julia. I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again." He cleared his throat and looked straight into the camera, steady. "So I changed the will." There was a collective gasp in the room. Someone's chair creaked, Rick's maybe. Karen muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't hear it. I could barely hear anything but the sound of my father's voice. "I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings, the retirement fund, it's yours. And a college trust for Eli. I know it doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive." He paused, then leaned slightly closer to the camera. "And if they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed." A lump formed in my throat so big I could barely breathe. "I'm proud of you, and I love you, Julia. Always did. I just didn't know how to show it." And then just before the video faded to black, he added quietly, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you." The screen went dark. No music, no transition, just silence. Pure, still, holy silence. Around me, chairs squeaked, someone sniffed. But I didn't move. I sat there, hand over my mouth, tears slipping down my cheeks, feeling like something I didn't even know I was carrying had finally been lifted after all the years of noise, of blame, of exile, of silence. He heard me. He finally heard me. And in the quiet that followed, no one could take that away. No one spoke when the screen went black. Not Karen, not Rick, not the cousins or the family friends who once smiled politely while ignoring the weight I carried. Even Mr. Connors sat still, his hand frozen above the mouse, as if stopping the video had also stopped time. And maybe, in a way, it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand was still over my mouth. My cheeks were wet. But I hadn't noticed the tears falling, until I felt Eli's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with this small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting the whole time for the truth to finally find a voice. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big for words. Love, relief, grief, all knotted together. Across the room, Karen stood abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor. She picked up her bag with shaking hands and walked out without a word. Her husband trailed behind, red in the face, mumbling something under his breath. Rick stayed seated longer, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally stood, he looked at Connors like he wanted to argue. But even he knew there was nothing to fight. My father had spoken. His truth was now unignorable. The others followed, one by one. Some couldn't meet my eyes. A few offered quiet nods, pity, or maybe respect. I couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of us left. Connors gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, voice softer than before, but everything's in order. I nodded. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He gave a small smile, genuine, and left us alone in the room. The silence that followed wasn't the same kind I had grown used to. This silence was peaceful, whole, like something had finally settled into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand, still looking at me like I was the strongest person in the world, and maybe, in his eyes, I was. But he was the one who saved me, who carried that envelope like it was just a piece of paper, not the truth that would rewrite everything. We stayed a little longer. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed time to breathe. Maybe I wanted to sit in the one room where, for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. I kept hearing Dad's voice in my head. "I'm proud of you." 3 words I thought I'd never hear. Words I needed more than I ever admitted. I thought about everything I'd carried. Years of silence, of being blamed, of being erased. And now I wasn't erased. I was seen, heard, remembered. I looked at Eli again. "Thank you," I whispered. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For being braver than me," I said. "For holding on to something that mattered." He smiled. "I just wanted you to hear him." And I had, not just in the video, but in the shift that came after, in the peace that filled the room once everyone else had left. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always come when you want it. But when it does, it changes everything. So no. I didn't walk out of that room broken. I walked out holding my son's hand with my father's words still echoing in my chest. I walked out whole. And that silence finally meant something. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been pushed aside, misjudged, or made to feel like your voice didn't matter, just know this: you are not invisible. And sometimes, the truth takes time, but it will come to light. If you felt something while listening, please give this video a like, and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Stories like this only reach the people who need them most when you help them travel. And if you want more real, raw, and emotional stories just like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to tell. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your voice matters.